Perfect. Uh, all right. So first of all, thank you so much, all of you, to come here. Our biggest fear was that it will be four of us in the meeting room alone discussing these things. But fortunately, so many people are interested and willing to come and take their time out. So thank you very much. So what are we doing here? What is this responsible today thing? So it started off as an idea a long time ago. I work as a creative technologist, and I've been teaching about the creative part of technology, as fellowship for artists, AI, teaching AI to artists, and all of these things. But I never had the medium to talk about the negative impacts and the effects of technology. And I wanted to kind of talk about these things because once you understand, once you see this world, you really want to tell people that, oh, there is something going on. The medium kind of didn't exist. So I was having this discussion with Mikhail, and I said this idea that we should have this thing called Responsible Future Initiative to talk about having a better future with technology in relationship with technology. But he said a wonderful thing that we have the problems today, and we should work on the solution today instead of talking and thinking about the future. And that's how it changed into Responsible Today Initiative. Uh, so when we started talking about these technological challenges, I had this idea in mind that we all kind of have that technological challenges is something which affect our life, but it's one of the challenges, right? It's not the biggest one. It's not as serious as terrorism, right? Like there are bigger problems in the world. And then I actually started looking into this where we were doing the research and talking about the challenges. And what we found was really scary and startling. One of the first things is in comes from the YouTube user base that apparently YouTube Kids app now cater to kids from 1 year old to 12-year old. There are specific content categories for these young children. Uh, there is a case of the average age on the social media now when people start their social media pages is 12 and a half year old. That's the current data that we have. In Bareilly, there was a case, very interesting case in a small town in India called Bareilly. Very interesting case of a 3-year-old, 3-year-old child being addicted to the phone so much that they have to assign a facilitator for him, and he won't talk to the person to the until given a phone in his hand. And the facilitator said, the consultant said that they were facing these cases in a large amount of numbers. They had 39 cases in the last 2 months in the similar kind of incidents. The number of deaths in accidents involving mobile phones was 5,000 2019, and with a growing, that's a growing number. That was a 30% increase from the last year. If you go on Google and search for Indian WhatsApp lynching, you will find a particular page which is documenting instances of lynching that happen in India from rumors spread on WhatsApp. Specifically, this particular page is documenting specifically the cases which are relating to the child abduction and organ harvesting rumors. We all know about the cow lynchings that happen in India. There's a lot of data available on that. Recently, we all heard about the Rohingya Muslim genocide in Myanmar as well. There are 10,000 people who died in that, and the Rohingyas in Myanmar are suing Facebook for their involvement in not handling it correctly. Now, one of the arguments that I heard from a lot of people when I was expressing these ideas is that technology is neutral, and these problem, fake news is not a new problem. Technology is doing its job; they're giving people what they want. So, what is new? Fake news have been there, violence have been there for a long time now. What changed? I think one of the biggest things that changed is before we were reading the newspaper was not reading you. The newspaper was not looking at how you respond to certain stories and recommending you content accordingly. That changed. Now we have invented machines that can learn by themselves. That is the foundation of majority of the technical advancement we have today, artificial intelligence. Machine that can learn by themselves. You let it play chess and it becomes the best chess player in the world. You let it see the driving data, it becomes a pretty good driver. But you also point the same machine to a human brain and ask it to learn how to do engagement, and it learns really well. And if you give it data of the billions of people around the world, it becomes really good at retaining people on the platform. The problem is it doesn't ask questions like at what cost. The algorithms have no method of asking these questions that what if being more engaged means more angry? What should we compete with sleep for engagement? Or how should we moderate it for developing young minds? The machine just learn to keep you hooked onto the platform as long as possible. And we have all smelled this digital opium through our screen, and it does smell soothing. I am speaking not from a higher place. I do watch Netflix till 4 in the morning and watch YouTube videos all the time. So it's coming from a place of understanding, not from having an upper hand. Now, I also heard this argument that technology is neutral and people want to see this. You can't blame the platform. Now, we have seen in 2020 there was a leak of documents from internal documents from Facebook, and Wall Street Journal did an investigation called the Facebook Files, and it showed very clearly that Facebook understands the issues, the challenges that the society is facing because of the platform better and faster than anyone else, because it's their platform, they have all the data. There is known reports from the internal document of Facebook that they found that researcher found inside Facebook that 1 in 8 app users report engaging in compulsive use of social media, affecting their sleep, work, parenting, or relationship. And this is 360 million people, according to the Facebook's internal data. There was a document, internal memo showcasing that Facebook knew about that social media is increasing anger in society, in people. And 2018, they actually gave this document to Mark Zuckerberg and said that this is what the algorithm is causing, and they knowingly did not take action because it will actually reduce retention and attention of people who are coming to the platform. The company know that there are internal documents from Facebook who know about how Facebook and their platforms are being used to spread hatred, the religious violence and hatred in India. And they know there is a known document from Facebook which says 300% increase in hate speech during the Delhi protest. Right. So all of this is known by the platform, and it's not the platform is neutral. They are specifically not taking action which hurts their profits. Now, we have all heard of the famous Stanford prison experiment of 1971, right? The brutal experiment which had to be ended. The one thing that we generally miss about the experiment, which is generally not talked about, that this experiment was not being done in a bunker in a secret facility. It was the Stanford University. Many people passed by the experiment looking at people being in really bad condition and just walked by because it's none of their business. The one person who intervened was psychologist Christina Maslach, who was dating Philip Zimbardo at the time, the person conducting the experiment. And she said that it's terrible what you're doing to these boys, and how can you see what I saw and not care about suffering? And they have to end the experiment on the 6th day. Now, we are all part of this giant experiment which is running, and I don't see many people raising voices. Now, there are some voices, to be honest, who are working on these issues. Now, majority of these voices come from inside the Silicon Valley. Now, are we gonna wait for Silicon Valley to kill the monster that they have invented themselves? Are we gonna trust the same people to solve these problems who are actually profiting? And majority of these voices are actually funded by the money which is actually coming from the Silicon Valley. So I think we will need something of ourselves, like an indigenous movement, from especially thinking about a country like India, which we know what kind of challenges we are facing on day-to-day level. Now, just to be clear, our approach is not of anti-technology. The approach that we have is not that we should stop using technology and we should not use internet and technology is bad in general. I personally believe in the transformative power of technology. As someone who was born in a small town in India, who grew up under poverty line and have almost no formal education, I was able to become a creative technologist and do all of these things because I had accidentally had access to a computer. I fundamentally believe in the constructive power of technology, but there have to be rules, there have to be seatbelts, there have to be a conversation about what are we doing to ourselves and how do we go forward. Now, I know that this sounds like too big of a thing for a Zoom call to solve, and we are just 4 people on a Zoom call, and what are we gonna do? We also thought the same thing. We borrowed someone's Zoom Pro account, and we are talking about corporations who have trillions of dollars. So I totally understand that feeling. But when we needed a Zoom account to do this meeting, we asked people and somebody gave it to us. And maybe if we just have these people who want to help, who want to join this, who are interested in something like this, if you have allies, if you have help, maybe there is a chance. Maybe we can do something. So that's the idea behind the Responsible Today initiative. So we will just introduce ourselves first. Aditi, go ahead, and then we will start with your introduction.
Thanks, Hassan, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. I am Aditi. I work as a security engineer right now in Atlassian. Before that, I was working as an engineer with Microsoft 5 to 6 years ago, and that role got converted into data scientist. And I'm sharing that context because when I joined Microsoft, just before joining Microsoft, I had exposure to Electronic Frontier Foundation, where we were talking about digital rights. And then I joined Microsoft, and I joined as a developer. And throughout the time when I was building features, there was always this thing of, okay, I'm building this or I'm building this ML model, but how does it affect like people who will be using it? And they're like, Microsoft is a great company, but there were no talks around that. Like, that is not the primary concern of developers, that, hey, is this technology ethical? How do you do that? We do have privacy things like GDPR, but we don't have that active conversation of what does ethical algorithm exactly mean, right? So there's no interest whatsoever. And that kind of disturbed me initially, like 2-3 years. I'm like, okay, I'm building this, but there has to be this discussion. So I started doing it with the colleagues at Microsoft. I started going to the universities, the people who are joining these companies, and asking them their motivation of what does it mean to be a good developer. And they would be like, the things that they're looking for is like a good package or, bigger challenging problems to solve and work on, but they do not always think about the impact that they're having on human minds directly. So that bit was missing. And then I did some more talks with different kind of people, like, the senior citizens or just the local city crowd, to understand what are their point of views. And the knowledge gap that exists there is too huge. They just have no clue on what is happening on their mobile phones. They interact like, okay, something happens, I click this, something happens, but they have practically no visibility into what goes behind that. So all of that gaps that I saw here and there made me question that, do we even have a comprehensive understanding of what is happening with tech? And clearly we don't. And that is when I talk to Hassan or I talk to Kriti. So Kriti works in a small business on social media. And we have had talks around how much, the platform provides, use case that you are getting value out of it. You are able to promote your business, but the very fact that you cannot control your usage of the platform also takes a toll on your mental health. So where is the trade-off? Like, where do we draw the line? And there is a lot that can be done. There is the design which can be changed. We can ask very fundamental questions as well. For example, should we be online all the time? Should we be getting instantaneous messages or notifications? Do we need that kind of instantaneousness in human world, or can we like wait for some time and be patient with the life and just carry on at the pace that we were used to? Are we supposed to get that amount of information, or is it just okay because we have access to information? So there's just always this good and bad. And I'm hoping to get more diverse perspectives on those kind of things, because we have such a diverse audience today. So what can we do about it? And what do you think about the challenges which are happening, and challenges that you yourself have seen or encountered? And what are your thoughts on how the solutions could look like? So yeah, very excited about the conversation. And that's it. I think one last thing if I would like to share is the primary concern that I have here is the impact of human mind itself. Like, we do not understand human mind, how our mind works, how our attention works. And that itself poses a very big challenge in understanding what impact technology has on us, because we do not monitor our attention, and the asks that we are making of people to use tech judiciously itself is very problematic, because we are not that conscious about our own mind or how thoughts flow in our mind. So there's another angle that I'm hoping to discuss more in this meeting. Yeah, so that was me. I'll pass it on to Michael. We call him Michael because Michael will tell why we do that, but yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks, Aditi, and thanks, Hassan. I mean, I still recall meeting Hassan for the first time, which was actually directly related to a meeting I had with Field of View in Bangalore. And at the time, I was just starting my anthropological project, which I'm doing with the Max Planck Institute for Social Anthropology, where I'm trying to think through what AI actually is. If you look at the history of artificial intelligence, which is crucial to a lot of the technologies that we're concerned about, you see that the question of what AI precisely is and what it does directly also relates to the impact it has. So I started formulating a project where I was looking at AI from two different angles. One was from the angle of artists making use of AI, often because their projects, we have Harshit joining us here today, who's one of the leading AI artists in India, besides Hassan, who has done phenomenal work in this field. What you often see with these projects is that on the one hand, they kind of show the potential of AI, but on the other hand, they also kind of criticize it, kind of show its problematic dimensions. And Hassan as well as Harshit can offer beautiful examples of that through their own work. And for me, that was a way of kind of interrogating from a social sciences perspective of what AI is and how it impacts us all in social and cultural terms. But I wanted to also have a different perspective on that. And that's why I started talking to data scientists, primarily based in Bangalore, to get a better understanding of how they relate to the black box underlying AI. Is there such a thing as a black box? And I've had incredibly different experiences having that conversation. Being a non-techie, in my physics and math education is extremely limited because of the special way that Dutch schools are organized. I'm based right now I'm here now in Amsterdam. Normally I will be in Halle in Germany, kind of shuttling up and down there. So I don't know much about the algorithmic kind of technical dimensions behind it. But is that really necessary to get a better grip on what AI means and how it kind of funnels all these technologies on social media, data gathering wise and otherwise? And I just wanted to finalize here with a brief example. While talking about this in Bangalore, we had many different conversations about this, among which I remember talking to Kiran about this and to, let's see where you've gone from now. Oh yeah, Kavis of Venkata. We talked about this black box. And then I brought some of these insights back to the Netherlands and I started speaking to this professor of artificial intelligence at the Free University. And he's been in this field for about roughly 30 years. And he kind of sort of said, in a very blunt Dutch way, he said, oh, the black box is very real. We've lost track of what AI is doing some 7-8 years ago. And obviously there are, again, a lot of different opinions about that. But what does that actually mean? If we kind of accept that, what are the consequences of that? So, so this is where I come in with my concern about the impact it is having. What if we embrace the idea that we don't really know what it does in technological terms? Then, what are the consequences for the way we live with it? Should we continue the introductions, Hassan?
So I'll do my introduction, just a quick one, and then we'll pass on to everyone else. And again, we can share who you are and what do you think about it. So my name is Hassan. A few of you know me already, but for those who don't, I am a creative technologist. I use technologies like artificial intelligence, robotics, AR, VR, sound design to make projection mapping to make magical experiences as art installations and also as digital art works. I've been teaching for a long time now as well. I started as a computer hacker from the security research domain, moved into coding, moved into electronics, automation, IoT, then to arts eventually, working now mostly with organizations and teaching other artists how AI can be used to actually empower the artist. Instead of being afraid of technology, how do you accept technology and use it in your own practice? And while doing all of these things, I always had this one lecture in my whole fellowship, which was the dark side of algorithms. And but you can't really scare people if you are actually if you're hoping that they would accept new technology. So you can't really scare them too much. So I was always asked that, hey, can you tone this down a little bit? Don't scare people too much. And after that, like it kind of became a thing. Then I started a small project called Puja is Calling, which is about scams happening online. And in India, it's a very common phenomenon. I mean, mostly we have been seeing these emails in the Nigerian prince emails. That was the old format. Now it's like WhatsApp messages, Instagram, Facebook, dating apps are now the new target for scammers. And I started doing that project, and from that side, it kind of, I understood the moment I shared these stories with people that these are the scams which are happening. I was surprised that how many people came forward and said that this exact thing happened to me. And at that point, I realized that it's such a big problem, and nobody is openly talking about it, either because there is no incentives. The tech companies are really, really rich and they have a lot of money to spend. So generally, these voices are not really supported well, but there needs to be a medium. So when we started discussing these things and we were like, okay, what do we do? What are the actions we need to take? We realized very fast that we are not smart enough to figure this whole thing out by ourselves. Don't have all the resources. We are all in the mosh pit, exactly, Ambika. So that's when we just sat down. It's like we can't just, the four people can't really do much, but we need to hear more people's opinions and have more ideas, have more allies, have more help, and only then we might be able to do something. What are the ways forward? Maybe if we have communities we have a community of psychologists, maybe we can have an open rehab programs which is about technological addiction. Maybe if we have policymakers, we can have the correct policies about how to moderate these technologies for developing minds. How do we have limitation on the kind of polarizing content out there? Are we incentivizing the right content? Are the incentive that creators have, the people who are creating the content, are they have the right incentive? What changes do we make? All of these are very specific answers which comes from specific knowledge that people have been working on for years and years, and we are just like too small and too dumb to have all the answers. So that's why we just want help from everyone. I would like to pass this on to Abhi now. Abhi, go ahead and then continue. Just pass it on to the next one.
Hi, I'm Abhinay Koparji. I also am sort of a creative technologist, but my background is more in film and music. So I come in from completely an artist angle. I've been trying to do things with the interactive art for a few years, and things seem to be picking up now finally. Um, so I personally struggle a lot with uh, should I be social or should I go in my cave and try to make things? I think a lot of us can share that. And especially with social media, it's a nice trap to fall into because you can be sort of in a cave and still be putting things out and promoting yourself and think that is doing something. But sometimes it is. Sometimes it is great, as we have seen. But sometimes you develop a false sense of importance, and as well as the whole part of addiction and all of that. I've often spoken about these uh, things that I kind of participated myself in. Let's do 30 days of code. Let's do 30 days of ink, 30 days of music, and try to promote yourself. And I've seen so many people get very screwy about it, and uh, all the social interactions that come with it, that people are trying to produce whatever comes that day. I mean, it's great for practice, great for doing it for yourself. But if you're getting trapped in that uh, social space situation with it can get scary for a lot of mindsets. Yeah, I think I'll end here.
You have to nominate the next person, Abhi.
Okay, I think I know Ambika here the most. So, Ambika.
Hi guys, I'm currently struggling with TV media addiction of my son, but I guess that's all moms. I'm Ambika. I'm somewhere between a creative technologist, a project manager, and in the past a museum designer. And Abhinay and Hassan have been sort of my uh, early promoters and constantly supporting whatever I've been trying out. Uh, Recently, I've kind of moved into looking at some work around the new AI generative text to image kind of technologies, and to see try to see how I can reveal some biases within these larger image-based data sets and the way the prompt semantics are read. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. And I will nominate, I know Kiran, so I'll nominate him. Hi, Kiran.
I am become been a while. You should put on your camera and you should come on as well. So to introduce myself, I'm a computer programmer. I have been doing this for most of my life, and that's my day-to-day job. So on most days, I'm with my code editor and the terminal working on code. But that's kind of like the backdrop. The foreground of what I do is for the past, I think a little over a decade and a half, I have been a community organizer, getting people in tech to talk to each other. And that came about because one of the things I realized working in tech outside of the hot tech areas, when you work on the periphery of the tech industry, which is people who use tech to create new services, or government, where I spent about 3 years working on e-governance, their understanding of tech is still not very fully formed. And so it's always seen as something you bring in and solve a problem with. And they don't really understand that it is not something you order and get done. And it kind of has a tendency to take over the way your organization functions. So I kept finding that the people that I was working with simply did not have any place to understand what they were actually doing, or to understand what impact that they were having on the work and on the organization they were working for. And so I started organizing community events as a way to get people to talk to each other, and realized that that was something that was needed on a much larger scale than the small thing I was doing. And so that's kind of become my career pathway. And I've done that for now almost a decade and a half. And about 6 or 7 years ago, I ended up accidentally getting dragged into something else. I accidentally ended up getting dragged into digital activism. One of the first things I ended up being part of was what was called the Save the Internet campaign for net neutrality in India in 2015. And that campaign ended up going extremely well. We managed to get more than 1 million people to respond to a government consultation, which is unheard of in the history of this country. It has not happened before, it has not happened since. But we did manage to get fairly good government regulation on net neutrality, and we have seen the consequences of that with current cheap data rates, which was not the case pre-2015. It's all a post-2015 phenomenon of the way the internet has changed in this country. Now, this ended up sort of putting me in a bit of a spotlight where there was some demand for activism services, which was a very unusual thing for me, because I didn't think of myself as a professional activist. I thought of myself as just pointing out that there was an obvious misunderstanding of technology that had to be corrected on the public consciousness. And so this ended up becoming my second activist campaign. This time, some of the people who work on what's called India Stack today, but back then was called Aadhaar, trying to recruit me as a spokesperson, and me ending up examining what they're trying to recruit me for, and discovering that it was actually extremely horrific, in that there was simply no correlation between the claims being made and what the technology actually did. It was doing the exact opposite of what they were claiming to do. And that misrepresentation was passing in public simply because it was not very obvious that it was inverted. So this ended up becoming a forced campaign for me, because the method they were using to recruit me was to say, with threats of destroying my livelihood if I didn't comply. And so that became something that I could not just walk away from. And so it became a fairly intense battle. We ended up participating in the Supreme Court in a case on Aadhaar in 2018, which we lost. And it wasn't just that we lost the case, but you also saw a government causing widespread damage with faith in technology, coming back with an even bigger mandate from the public in their election. And so this kind of was a fairly depressing moment for me, because you look at it and say, this is clearly wrong. In some ways, you could define this as evil, and yet it gets rewarded. So what is going on over here? And so this is the place where I had to start examining my own biases about what I thought was going on. And, you know, Hassan, something you mentioned has been a bit of a trigger for me. You brought up the Stanford prison experiment. You know, and so the thing that's not clear to me is which part of the Stanford prison experiment is interesting to you. What they found about human behavior, or the experiment itself? Because this, you know, the experiment itself is controversial, that the experiment did not actually discuss human behavior. It discussed fraud in experimentation. And you'll find that coming out further later when you look at another thing that's quoted a lot, this book called Lord of the Flies, which talks about how people will behave when you leave them in a certain environment, which, as it turns out, is just make-believe. You know, it's someone projecting their morality on a population and passing it off as an actual behavior study. And so this is the thing that I've started to realize is happening as an undercurrent in, you know, whatever we do about technology, that there is this undercurrent of faith in technology and the technologists, and we're seeing it over the last couple of weeks explode on Twitter with Elon Musk and his fanboys, you know, who come here and think that this man will solve for free speech using technology. And how the hell is he going to solve it? You know, and so every time I've tried to have a passionate debate with someone, say, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, there's clear, obvious chaos. You put aside the chaos and say it's temporary, he's just got a personality problem, but there is, you know, a free speech solution coming down the pipe. What is it? And it's some form of AI, that AI will solve for free speech. You know, so this is sort of interesting, because what it kind of points out is that symbolism of AI and the symbolism of the hero overrides what it actually does and causes people to organize in ways that have nothing to do with the AI itself. You know, so we have seen this in India with, you know, there is fetishization of how technology will solve social problems. We're seeing this with now this fetishization of how Elon Musk will solve a free speech problem, but it works in both ways. You know, there's Elon Musk is the hero figure that everybody says, speaking against him is not allowed. We will silence organization of an anti-Elon Musk position on the one hand. But on the other hand, the actual anti-Elon Musk position, which will develop and which will create new collaborations, which will create new technologies, all that's going to happen. And all of that is going to happen not on the basis of saying his understanding of AI is wrong, but this is all bullshit. Let's just have a community discussion on, you know, better ways to do things. And so you're going to get this anti-tech thesis building on one side, which is not obvious because it's being shouted out by the pro-Elon Musk, you know, fan club, and the pro-Elon Musk fan club extends to all the corridors of power. You look at all the VC industry in the US, and all of them are, yeah, you know, Elon Musk is right. You just have to wait and watch. He's going to do it. So this is sort of interesting in this, because the technology and its black box and all of these things are just not the story anymore, and they're not even relevant in this case. You know, it's more about the faith in it or the faith against it, and how they organize will end up creating interesting things. So that is my little bit that I want to bring up. You know, that I'm afraid of this becoming a technology merit discussion, but more about a technology faith discussion, which is where the interesting part is. Yeah, so that's my bit. With that, I will pass it on to Venkata Pingali. Venkat, why do you have Kavish in your name? So because
my kid has been using my Zoom, and Zoom remembers this thing, right? So talk about you know, technology making some choices for you.
Thank you for asking that, Kiran, because I had the same question, and I was, you know, I was too hesitant to ask Venkata why that Kavish.
Yeah, no, it's not my name. Okay, for everybody, I mean, of course, I know Suchna and Kiran. I'm an entrepreneur. My day-to-day job involves a lot of machine learning, lots of data, and so on. When you're like talking about bad guys at Twitter or anywhere else, they all look like me and my friends and my possibly extended family. Over a long period of time, I do have points of view on technology. I would like to bring only one thing to the table, because I've had these conversations with the folks at the big tech and elsewhere. See, if you look at this own forum, right? All of us come from a certain kinds of pedigree, certain education. We are speaking in English, we have fancy machines, and we can talk about creative art and things like that. My limited point here is that we are shaped by the incentives that we have, and mental models. We have the luxury of talking about a lot of things because we have resources, we have we went to good schools and so on. Over a long periods of time, as I've traveled a little bit abroad, but more recently when I've been traveling in India, I think that this is a conversation by by and for intellectual elite. At least I want to be a voice for a lot of people who are not at the table, and suggest to you that even the points of view that we all carry here, they are shaped by our elite experiences. And I think that we have strong incentives to think about the world every day. We have the luxury of having contrarian points of view, and oftentimes we are funded by the same people, right? If you ask who is I think I read this somewhere long time back. It has stuck in my mind. So during the 17th century, when they were talking about the Enlightenment period and so on, and of course, people talk about free will and free speech and all of those kinds of things. These same folks went over to the dukes or the powerful of the day and said that we will create the panopticons for you, with the best application of our ideas to controlling people. Right? So my limited point is that we have to recognize that even this group of people is a small self-selected group. We have a certain point of view, and as I've gone out into the world as an entrepreneur and hit the dusty streets of this country, I have learned to be a lot more humble, and we understand the loss of, the issue with the Facebook and so on, but there are people who want Facebook as well, right? This is a dramatic change from the old feudalistic, highly controlled economy. This is freeing up a lot of people as well. And by the way, I'm not pro Facebook or anything like that, so don't see me as a spokesman for any of that.
Venkat, amazing point, by the way. Before we pass on to the next person, totally completely agree with you, and that's one of the points that we actually discussed in the starting, that it can't just be a discussion on a stage about these intellectual subject, but we have to eventually the rigor is required, the kind of research, the kind of analysis is required, which we need people for, the expertise for. But I think eventually the goal is actually to take it to the people who are being affected by it in regional languages, instead of actually doing all of the communication in English. But before we actually start doing that bit, before we actually go to these people, we have to figure out what should be that message. I think that's the first step that we have. So yeah, just to reply to that. Next, Tanza, you like to do?
That's me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tanya. Hi. So hi everyone. My name is Tanya Achlin. I'm here sort of by accident. I just met Michael. Is that it? A couple of days ago via email, and he told me about this workshop, and I joined the wagon immediately because I'm very interested and also very concerned in some respects. So I'm an anthropologist, and I've been interested in technology for a long time, and I have a lot to say. I just don't know where to start, actually. I've also done my fieldwork in India, in Kerala, for my previous research, and that was on actually quite positive sides of technology. I looked at how people who live in different parts of the world, so families that live in different parts of the world, use technologies like mobile phones and the internet, including WhatsApp, to actually keep in touch with each other and to take care of each other. So when I talk about my research, I usually do that in a very positive way. And every time I present, there is a question about the negative sides of technologies as well. And I am concerned about that as well. I wanted to, listening to all of you, I want to share a link that might be interesting. This is about an association from Slovenia, where I'm from, and it has been existing for the past 10 years. And they joined quite a few psychologists to not just to research, but to actually actively help people with addiction. And they're really targeting parents, they're targeting video gamers, they're targeting schools. So they've been very active for the past 10 years already, which I find fascinating. And perhaps they even have a site in English. So that might be something to explore and to think with. I also want to say that at one point, I used to work as a translator as well, many years ago. And one of the books that I translated was called The Shallows. And it actually talks about how the internet is changing our brain very physically, on a physical level. And that's in the early, that was published in 2010, so before social media really took off. And it basically says how reading online with all those hyperlinks can actually interfere with our reading habits. So we're not, because of the internet then, like to make it very simple, we're not so focused anymore, our attention span goes down and so on. So, and that causes physical changes in our brain. So, it's no longer a guess, like, is this influencing us and so on. I think that young people, people who are 18 or 15 and so on, they were born into the world of internet. They don't know how life is without the internet. I am one of the last generations who knows that. So for them, I can imagine that they actually already are physically different from me. And I find that fascinating and also scary in some ways. So I am very much interested in things like, digital detox and so on. So, maybe to think about something like that. So I'm very interested in what the discussion will be today. I'm very interested to be engaged and involved as well, as much as I can with my anthropology background. So just like Michael, I don't know, I'm not a tech person at all. I don't understand much about algorithms and so on. And still, I do think that we have something to add. And I'm very excited when I see social scientists and especially anthropologists. I mean, when I look at the developments of AI, you have lots of social scientists in terms of communication and psychologists, right? Communication and media and psychologists, and that is to support the development of AI. But I'm all for anthropologists as well, because I think that we do have something important to add. Yeah. So thank you very much for having me here. I'm very much looking forward to the rest of the morning.
Can I add something before Tanya nominates something? So just to explain how these things go, some of the people here in the room, I met in Bangalore, then I met, Hassan, so it's kind of snowballing. With Tanya, the story was a little different. I was talking to my dear friend Rowan van Voorst, who's also an anthropologist and Amsterdam-based, and she was recently awarded a rather large EU grant to look at various aspects of AI and medical health technologies. And I was just talking to her and I said, do you want to join? Because even though her expertise is not on India per se, she's done a lot of really interesting work in Indonesia, and she could certainly talk about the bigger dimensions of it. But she said, no, I can't make it because As it happens in the world of anthropologists, everybody's always somewhere else. So she just happens to be in Paraguay right now, which time zone wise didn't really work out. But she said, you need to meet my new colleague, Tanya. And I had no idea about her work. But one thing I have observed in our world of anthropology is that there is really a growing interest in artificial intelligence or all the kind of sort of technologies that are related to it. Part of my work kind of sort of also questions that the moment we start talking about AI, what is AI, or is it more appropriate to talk about it as machine learning? But I'm also very much in agreement with what Kieran said earlier about, you know, there's a whole different dimension to that question as well, about its fakeness and the way, you know, it is positioned in a debate. So I particularly like what Tanya also just said, that you're kind of sort of flying in from a different angle where you're saying, well, I'm also, you know, my work actually highlighted some of the more positive dimensions of it. And I think we need to bring that into conversation. Thank you very much, Tanya. I'm looking forward to hearing who you're nominating next.
Well, that will be Claudia, because that's the only person that I know, and she keeps popping up in the same places, and I for her, I guess. So good to see you here as well.
Yeah, very good and very surprising. Good to see all of you, and thanks, Michael, for actually bringing us all together. I'm a colleague of Michael too. I'm working at the Max Planck in Halle too, also at the University of Leipzig. My background, an anthropologist like Tanya, working in Kerala. Interestingly, we just recently, a week ago, met at a conference which was about digitization in health and expertise. And so there's really, and I agree with Tanya, I agree with Michael, there's a lot of interest in anthropology recently in around all sorts of digitization, AI, and so on. My background, so I also don't know anything about algorithms. I don't understand them, but I'm very interested in them. I'm very interested in them as a social thing somehow. I see these algorithms as a human techno kind of assemblage or so. But so the background is I have been very interested in mental health in India for a long time. I think for the last 20 years, I've done extensive research on depression. I was interested in all sorts of things anthropologists used to engage with. So I was interested in Ayurvedic psychiatry. I was also interested in mainstream psychiatry. I worked with psychologists, with different kinds of ritual healers. So I was just interested in all sorts of, you know, things around mental health in Kerala. Then I also became interested in public health, in primary healthcare, and so on. There are interesting things going on with regard to e-health in Kerala. So this is also a side project. But what I'm mainly doing at the moment is I'm interested in mental health apps. And here especially, I don't know, those, maybe you're familiar with an app which is called Wysa, produced in Bangalore. And I'm working with what they call AI, and those of you who are specialists would not probably call them AI, but I don't care too much about what it's called. I'm more interested in what it's doing in the world and also who are the people behind it. So I've started working together with these kinds of the psychologists in the team, with the designers in the team, different kinds of people, and actually how they actually, what they imagine this app to be doing in the world, and then also what this app is actually doing. And there's all different sorts of interesting questions around that, which I don't have time to go into detail now. But so this is what I'm actually working on. But there's also, I think, a stronger link to what you as a group are doing or are planning to do. And this is the other side. When I've started to work on digitization of mental health or digitization and mental health, I always had these two sides in my mind. So one thing is, how do people try to address mental health problems digitally? And on the other hand is exactly this. So what are the mental health related effects of technology, of digital technology, of AI, of social media, and so on? This is, of course, a super grand question. And this is why I was always hesitant to really address it ethnographically, because I thought, how can we, what kind of project can we do as anthropologists? And but I think this is actually this kind of conversation is actually one that I was looking for to also engage with. You know, what are the debates around digital media, social media, AI, and mental health. And I'm just interested to be part and also to contribute to these kinds of things. And just more personally, I completely second what Tanya said, and what all of you said about really the dangers of the positive sides and also the dangers of digital technologies. And I was just reminded of two things in the Silicon Valley that I came across. And one thing is this search within yourself kind of thing, or search inside yourself. And I'm sure that many of you are more familiar with this than I am. And I'm just interested, you know, what is this other thing? You know, what is happening there? How is mindfulness and all these things actually entering into this world? And the other thing is that I have 4 children, and all my children have been in a what we call Waldorfschule, a Steiner school, and in Germany. And what people very often talk about is that many of these big tech people in Silicon Valley, when they have children, they actually send them into Steiner schools. And one of the things that is special in Steiner schools, apart from many other things, is that a strong, like, keeping technologies out as long as possible. And you can have different stances on that. But what is just interesting is that all these people who are actually making their money and their livelihoods with all these media, when they have their own children, they send them to these schools. And this is something that I also find interesting. So how, as Tanya also said, how do people try to not escape in the sense, but detox is just one. But I think those people, and we talked about privilege, those people privileged enough to really understand what's going on. I'm not actually, but there are people who really know exactly well what they are doing, and you are part of them. There's this interesting documentary, The Social Dilemma. And so what are these people then doing when it comes to their own like way of living, to their children, to those around them, and so on? So yeah, this is just the beginning of a conversation, but I'm very glad to be part, and thanks for inviting me, Michael.
Thank you, Claudia. So actually, reportedly, there have been documentation of this, that Bill Gates and Steve Jobs both had no screen time for their children growing up. And I would assume that Mark Zuckerberg will follow the same strategy. So let's go next to Maitreyi. We will have to finish introductions fast. So if you can do quickly, all of you next. So Maitreyi, go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Maitreyi, and I feel like I come onto the stage when the Oscar music is playing to get off the stage, but I'll try to keep it very quick. So I'm meeting all of you for the first time, except Hassan. That's how I came through. Professionally, I have a company which runs an engineering product for Kubernetes and infrastructure, but my career is built on understanding human behavior in business context. So first of all, I will say hi to all the anthropologists here, because I borrowed a lot from your work while learning myself and bringing that to the business people who usually wouldn't love to read research papers. I do. So I read a lot of research papers, and I'm like the bridge between the academic work that's being done and the people who are applying it without reading the academic work. So 12 years, I talked to a lot, from 7-year-olds watching Disney Channel in Bombay to 14-year-olds preparing for exams in a small village in UP, which is like 6,000 people village, to a smoker in Italy. So I think in 12 years, I probably would have spent cumulatively 4 years of my time just talking to people in different business contexts. So I spend a lot, which is interesting because I'm neurodivergent. So that's a very interesting way of looking what is normal to people, but it's always fascinating to me. And from a technology perspective, a lot of the work I do in the last 4 years are with people who are building technology, CXOs, product designers, etc. in EV, EdTech, fintech, storytelling mediums. So I sort of they're been happening, and who is not present in the conference rooms, and I try to bring the stakeholders, the users whose lives are impacted to the conference rooms wherever possible, so that the decision makers make it a little bit more participatory. But yeah, there's a lot of friction. It's not smooth flowing. But what are you going to do? Are you not? I mean, not doing anything is not an option, right? So you try to move the needle wherever possible. From the technology perspective, I think I'll quote a dialogue from an interesting movie I saw a few years back called The Last Black Man in San Francisco, that you can't hate something unless you love it. So all of my interest in criticizing technology comes because I love technology. I grew up middle class. I grew up in a small village as well, not a lot of big economic class. So a lot of access to my skill set and ability came through technology. And that's why I think now I spend half of my time pulling builders from jumping off the cliff, because there is a myopic vision of what technology, how much technology can solve things. And a lot of me is just bringing caution to those objectives, that you don't have to be solving everything to be useful. And, but yeah, that's where I come from. So I'm more of a business side, but I talk to a lot of people who are building the technology, and I do understand how not just individual choices, but organizational choices and business models and prevalent thinking impacts or made the world that we are living in right now. And I think there are many levers to pull if you want to change it. And I got a little bit of finger on all those pulses. And for me personally, I love stories. So if any of you are interested in comic books, graphic novels, video games, I'm your person. Please say hi on the chat, and I will definitely catch up with you on all those mediums. Yeah, and passing on, I think I will, all of you are new, but I think I will nominate Suchana.
Thank you so much, Maitreyi. So my name is Suchana. I am the founder of a startup called the Mindful AI Lab. We help organizations make their machine learning algorithms more responsible. We help audit those algorithms. So that's the professional perspective. And on a personal note, I'm a mother to a 3-year-old. And so a lot of the concerns that all of you have been voicing around technology, its impact on children, all of those things really, really do speak to me. So I think there's always this interesting tension, as Maitreyi was saying, it's difficult to hate something without also loving it, almost in an equal part. And so, I remember during the lockdown, how YouTube was literally, it saved my sanity as a mother to a very young baby. It helped me discover some of the most interesting music that, I've since come to love. And at the same time, the same fear around what is my child going to watch? How much do I need to limit screen time? And to what extent is it actually beneficial? At what age should we be introducing technology? So all of these concerns, I think we are all grappling with it on a day-to-day basis. Something that I, both as a consumer of technology, as well as someone who's involved in sort of the production process of technology, something that I think about a lot is, what sort of incentives are we as consumers creating for the companies that, that build products for us? So, when we talk about fake news, how much would we be willing to pay for legit news, as it were? I think those of us who still subscribe to a physical newspaper, like an actual physical thing, I think we're still okay to pay whatever it costs in India, like 5 rupees, 6 rupees a day for that paper. But how much would we be willing to pay for an app that claims to curate, or that claims to, that is transparent about its biases to some extent? How much would we be willing to pay for apps or services or products like that? I think the dominant business model of the internet being ad driven for such a long time, I feel has really created this bad habit, this bad set of expectations as a consumer, where we expect to get everything for free. There are so many artists here in this group. And so I think, you will appreciate when I talk about just what a marvelous piece of engineering an algorithm like Photoshop is. That's not something that one thinks about when one talks about AI, but really like, powering Photoshop and the amazing transformations that it can do to our images is a whole series of these amazing algorithms. And yet, so many of us are hesitant, we're put off by the price tag that comes with Photoshop, and many of us increasingly switching to free tools or tools that are inexpensive. So where does the economic sustainability of it come in? Because, as with anything that's created ethically and responsibly, that's expensive. There's a reason why ethical and sustainable clothing costs a hell lot of money, as it should. There's a reason why handicrafts cost a hell lot of money, as it should. It should go to support, the money should go to support the artisans who make it. So then as consumers, how much are we willing to pay for similar ethical, responsible, content, for responsible technology? Because at some point, the cost either gets passed back to us directly as consumers, or else, it's the VCs or the investors who are going to call the shots on how that technology gets produced, because it's their money on the line. So I think that's, this is not, I think I want to make a distinction here between responsibility and blame. So it's very easy to blame or blame shift and say, technology does this, technology does that. But it's also on us as consumers to own some responsibility and say, what kind of technologies are we willing to pay for? What kind of technologies are we willing to build? And then, I think for me, a ray of hope, again, this is something that I was, I personally witnessed during the lockdown as well, is the way that technology and platforms particularly enable people to come together. So, even today, I'm part of a bunch of, for lack of a better term, like moms groups on WhatsApp, that curate like experiences or books for their little ones. And none of this would be possible without the power of technology, right? So how much are we willing to trust this process of spontaneous, cooperative, sort of a community-driven way of, addressing some of these ills that technology creates? So those are the two things that I wanted to throw out there for us to consider. And I know I've taken up a lot of time, so I'm going to hand it over to, let's see who hasn't yet done the introductions. Okay, I don't think we have heard from Ratan.
Yeah. Hi guys. So my name is Ratan. I'm a visual designer, and I'm like just finished my graduation, like learning and doing design, visual design. And I actually met Hassan while I was working on my final graduation project, which was on. First, I met him at India Art Fair. Then I went and then I talked to him, being like, hey, I need your help in this particular thing. So my in the realm of technologies, like I have been constantly in an area where I question things, whether they are right or wrong, or like constantly in a question of is there something do we either need or not. So for example, my graduation project was on what are NFTs, and like building a community which also talks about whether the roles of crypto in the current market, of how we are going to see art in the future, but also in the sense of how either it's going to be used in the society as a medium of currency, or also medium of, say, how I share my digital products with the other person in those realms. And also on the other hand, I've also been interested in areas such as media literacy, where in my final I wrote a dissertation and a paper on the effect of memes, on how they are sort of currently being used at different platforms to actually curate our own decisions, and how we see things, how we like make opinions of particular things. And so one of the examples for that also was how like with the Pepe the Frog, which was also being used as neo-Nazism and different propagandas, and also helped like was a part of the Trump election, which he did in 2016. And on the other hand, I like I've also been interested in exploring different realms of society, like even technology, in the sense of how are we also becoming less human beings with less survival instincts with the use of technology, in the sense of how we use maps. Like we don't have a sense of direction now. We don't rely on our own instincts of whether we know where we are going to go or not, and how that like skill or like sense of us has also declined over the years. And whether, like, say, if there's a blackout in technology realm, will humans be able to survive or not? So these are the questions which I try to answer, or like try to find answers in joining different groups such as this, and also have discussions with my colleagues. And yeah, like these are the things which I'm get into and also discuss on my podcast. But yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
We
So
heard
next
about-
person, like Harshit. So like if Hassan you want, or
No, I was just looking for all who haven't, but yeah, Harshit is good.
yeah, Harshit.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, first of all, Michelle, Michael. I need to speak to you about what's the best way to pronounce your name later. But it's wonderful to hear all the conversations. I think, like Hassan sort of mentioned, I think having this discourse is probably one of the first steps of getting to a place where we collectively feel more comfortable with technology. I think, like, yeah, in terms of an introduction, I'm Harshit. I work with AI and other forms of technology for making art, other forms being virtual reality primarily, and also robotics to some extent. But yeah, I think the angle that I would probably approach this is also thinking from a creative expression lens, because I think Maitri pointed out Photoshop or someone else, if I'm getting the name wrong, but I also work with Adobe, and it's definitely like, especially in the creative expression space, we are seeing sort of a lot of like technological innovations around how AI tools like Midjourney, DALL-E, etc. are like really starting to create new forms of expression, democratize their like possibilities for more people, and simultaneously have a lot of like interesting conversations around copyright, using people's data for without acknowledging it, and all of that. So I think, yeah, like all those leave us with a lot of prominent like threads of conversation. And happy to see how all this shapes up. My 2 cents in this sort of matter is, yeah, like technology definitely, as again, I'm blanking on the names, but as someone pointed out, has obviously both positive, negative connotations to it, but it's something that's here and we can't really like, it'll be a very strong choice to say that you want to live without its presence in your life. So I think that leaves us with the question of, okay, like, can we get more and more people into the conversation? And sort of, for me, art becomes that medium where it creates experiences where you are sort of inviting people to engage with it at a more personal, intimate level, and then possibly become like starting points of deeper reflection, and then possibly shaping how these things, or forming a more, like a more personal relation with technology. So can we create more experiences that enable you to do that, and then sort of, you take it from there kind of scenario, rather than sort of forcing people into a certain way of thinking about technology. So but very excited to be with all of you and have these discussions. Thank you. And I would nominate, let's see, I think Kriti hasn't spoken, so Kriti.
Hey Harshit, thank you. It's amazing to actually get to know all of you here. I'm quite new to this domain. So I won't say I'm like completely away from technology for that matter, because I have been a software engineer and worked with people who have somewhat experience with this thing. But I'm more into mindfulness practice. So I'm a mindfulness practitioner, and I am a life coach also. And the funny thing about social media that came to my knowledge was I'm having a small business that goes by the name Mindful Vibing, and I do polymer clay jewelry over there. And the one thing that I realized was, since I come from a marketing background, because I have also worked as a content strategist marketer. So when I was dealing with the clients, and most of my clients come from Instagram only. So when I was dealing with them, there's this attention deficit disorder that is actually happening among all of us, that we acknowledge or don't, but we are actually going through that. And what happens is, in business, we are told that as soon as you address to the query of a person, the chances of them converting into your client are better. So when I had to do that, I was constantly online, and I realized this thing that if I was replying to clients within a time span of say like few seconds or few minutes, I was getting the conversions. And if I was not replying to them, maybe I was replying to them the next day or something, I was literally losing the clients. So that kind of thing is also something that made me really fear social media, because as much as it helped me grow my business, it was a very huge question for me for what was at stake. And quite frankly, my mental health was at stake, because like what we do on online, like if I just go on online, I'm getting a DM, I'm replying to them, it doesn't end there. What I'll do is, if I'm on the platform, I'll go and I'll start scrolling. And approximately 85% of the time, the scrolling is mindless scrolling. Mindless scrolling refers to the thing like, if you are just scrolling through it and you put down your phone and you just try to remember what you scrolled through, you won't be able to realize what you actually went through. Like if somebody asks you, okay, you were on the phone for the last 10 minutes, now tell me one thing that inspired you, one thing that caught your attention. It might be a meme or something. Because, and why that is happening? Because in like in a lot of cases, I deal with a lot of people who come to me for this life coach sessions and stuff. And the one thing that I have realized among Indians is that we are actually living on a survival basis. Like there was a study that was mentioned by, I think, The Wire, launched a study where they said that the top 10% population in India, if you're earning around 25,000 in India, INR, then you are in the top 10%. And if you look at the study of, the top cities where you want to live in, the basic amenities, the basic living cost is around 35. So you're not even able to make up to that. Now, if we are living in the survival kind of a mindset, and then we go on a platform, and I think most of us just want, a little bit of fun, a little bit of ease to our brains. And that is what we are seeking. And Instagram, for one, like it was TikTok previously, but Instagram for one is actually when it comes to the rise of technology.
Kirti, your voice is breaking. We can't hear you. Can you?
Okay, I'm sorry. Now? Okay. So what Instagram is actually doing is like, it has been a constant, controversial issue, like whether the technology is reading us, and or are people interested into that kind of content, which some I think Hassan only introduced this thing. So the companies are saying that the technologies are pushing this kind of content because people want to look at it. And maybe that is also a case, but I think our minds are, we can easily mold our minds. Like, because as a mindfulness practitioner, what I do, be actually mindful about each and every single moment. Not that's just a practice that I also, teach other people to do. But quite frankly, it is, as long as you are online, being mindful is actually a huge lot of task. It doesn't come very easily. So yeah, I mean, like the main concern that I wanted to find answers to through this session was like, how exactly can we have stop signs maybe in with the help of technology? Because quite frankly, it helps a lot. It is not that technology is a bad thing or it is the villain of the entire story, but where can we include the stop signs? How can we make people to make the conscious mindful choice of living their life? Because just one last thing that I would like to say is that Harvard released the study that 47% of the times we are actually living in our minds. Like 47% of our entire life we are spending in our mind. And if we go to social media for the rest of the time, I don't think so we are living at all, right? Because if you calculate the amount of hours that you invest in your social media usage per day, I think it will be questionable for a lot of us, especially those who are having small businesses on the platform itself who have to deal with this. So yeah, that is like, I come from a more like a human kind of perspective to actually understand how I can help myself and my clients get a better understanding of this platform, social media per se, and help us to live more and live more in reality rather than an extended dream, which social media is. So yeah, that's from me. I would like to nominate, I guess we haven't heard from Nikita. I don't know you, but I would love to. So yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Kirti. And also thank you for sharing that. I think I'd like to start by just congratulating the organizers of this for getting such a diverse group of expertise in the same room. It's been a really engaging and it's been just really nice knowing about everyone. I come from a really strange background into this, and I don't know where to begin. I'm trained as in a traditional art form called Baul, which is a small folk theater form in rural Bengal. But during the pandemic, I think I was sort of pushed into the world of tech art because I did a fellowship in which I met Hassan. I and Hassan, I also worked together, and it's really strange coming from a very traditional background into tech, and so I've always been wary of it. And while I extremely enjoyed the project, we ended up creating this book for children on climate change, but all the entire artwork was AI generated. So we worked with GPT-3 and Disco Diffusion. And now, as an extension of that same project, what we're doing is, I'm also by profession an educator, and I've been looking at how technology is changing the ways of learning for a lot of students, and also just accessibility to tech. So I think because I come from a rather small group of people, I'm also very interested in the access to technology and how that is working. So currently we have a grant, and we are looking at how tech biases towards, like, it's so important for documentation of any art form to exist online for it to even be recognized by tech. And there are many that actually don't have proper documentation online. And therefore, if we do talk about a future where, metaverse is more a reality than the real world is, then what happens to these undocumented art forms or indigenous practices? And that's where I'm at. I'm currently in London studying to look at the effects of tech on art, and specifically marginalized art forms. And yeah, thank you so much for doing this, Hassan. It's been amazing knowing about everyone. I don't know if Roy is gone. Roy, do you want to talk next?
But before Roy comes online, Nikita, thanks for your remarks. Just on the side, I was just being back in Amsterdam, reminded about a decade ago, I brought a bunch of ball singers to Amsterdam to perform here in a large church. It was such a joy. Just you mentioning that musical brings that idea back to mind.
Oh, that's so nice to know. Thank you for sharing that.
So you'll probably know Prabhan Das.
Yes, I do. My own guru is Parvati Baul, but yes, I know.
Mimlu Sen was also there, and then we had some other singers like Sushila Raman and others involved. But that's on the side. We should go to Roy.
Hi.
Oh, Roy's here.
Hey. Hi. So I'm actually joining along with, so I came in because of Hassan. I think he's a common connect for a lot of people. We're doing a couple of projects with Hassan. My background is in graphic design, and so the kind of work that we do now is in the design consulting stage, but which is where we sort of work with brands and entrepreneurs in the tech and non-tech sphere. Along with my partner Upasana, we also sort of run Switch, which is a motion design in a lab. And that's where we sort of we are working on a bunch of things where which uses technology, which also questions technology. But and I think this is in a way sort of the burning question for all of us in this sphere, in terms of the impact of technology and how technology is shaping us in many ways. I think maybe we don't even recognize. In fact, I read a very nice quote yesterday. I think it was, I forgot who it was, but it was about the fact that we have Paleolithic brains, but we have godlike technology. And we probably are sort of at this whole dissonance phase where literally what's happening on a weekly basis is changing us in so many dramatic different ways. So in the creative field, for example, Midjourney and DALL-E obviously is allowing all of us to question that, how is this impacting arts? How is this impacting design? What would our role be? So I think our perspective is, in that sense, the idea that while technology is a tool, but I don't think it's as simple as trying to condense it, saying it that, it's just simply a tool, because this is a tool which sort of, like what Hasan said very nicely, is that this is a tool which studies us. So like the newspaper, which is able to study us, the tools that we use are studying us. They're sort of, and in a way, completely changing and maybe making us redundant in so many different ways. And that's a question that's there constantly in our sort of sphere. Both of us are also the parent of 11-year-old. Our daughter is 11 years old. And I think from our perspective, the most singular perspective is of us as a family unit, and the relationship that we have as a technology, as a family, and not just in a practice. So my daughter has a phone, but she had a phone without a SIM card for the longest time, because the idea for her was to actually use the phone to take photos, and she takes photos and draws from them. And in a way, I think that sort of became the closest way to see in terms of maybe what our relationship with technology, especially as practicing designers are, is where we're able to sort of use it to create and not necessarily just consume. So like everyone else, I mean, we are also large consumers of, from an OTT to tech and all of these as well. But if the control or the shift is more towards the creative and the act of creation, it's a very powerful tool. Interestingly, I think what Hasan mentioned about the Stanford experiment, I read this really wonderful book called Humankind by Rutger Bregman, I think. And one of the things that he actually talked about, that the Stanford experiment was portrayed as something which shows that, there is this huge negative side of humans that by nature are selfish. By nature, we are sort of prone to become more like a Lord of the Flies zone, but in fact, it's not. In fact, then what they later found out that in the Stanford experiment itself, a lot of people were opposing the experiment itself. But that part is not so newsworthy as the part saying that, something like this happened and, we all went down to our basis level. So I think that in a way also has some connection with how we sort of see technology as well, because ultimately, I think if we sort of know that there is a potential for good within mankind, and if we're able to sort of work with technology for it. But again, the shift of power, especially like with tech firms versus what we have, and the sense that, we are now just tiny cogs in this gigantic machine. I think the only way to sort of break it is to sort of be creative. Know that, we are able to create things, and however small these things are, even something like a Zoom channel where, all of us are sitting and talking, it has impact in some way or the other. It has impact in terms of maybe changing how we think, interacting with each other, sort of creates that, at least that sense of empowerment. And I think that sense of empowerment is what is really sort of crucial, which is sort of going to help us navigate this sort of new world altogether. So the idea of a black box where we don't really know what's happening and it's sort of just going to be throwing things at us is a really disempowering feeling, because it sort of means that I don't know whether I'll be relevant or not, 2 years from now or 5 years from now. But if there is that constant sense of relevance, and we're lucky to live in very strong, and obviously Hasan's also from Goa, so he can testify to it, but there's a very strong sense of community which exists on an on-ground basis. So that in a way is, and while that community does use technology to connect to each other, the technology is not the end goal. It's actually what the community is able to do together. So I think I'd missed a bunch of sessions. I'm not sure who's spoken, who's not spoken. So
I think Vikram, we haven't heard from Vikram, right?
No, I don't think so. Hi. So I'm also Goa based. I'm Vikram Mathur. I run a social science research collective. We're called Transitions Research, and we're based out of Goa. And I kind of come at the whole conversation around the I would say, social dimensions of technology from a couple of different lenses. So, I mean, I'm basically an environmental scientist, and I first started looking at models and simulations, and especially how models and simulations travel across the world. And that was my doctorate research. So I got into the kind of epistemology of models and simulations and the use of large-scale climate modeling and downscaling for, say, decision-making on natural resources in remote locations, right? So that was the kind of idea, and the whole idea of a black box, but also the challenges of localization and so on and so forth of complex science and simulations. You know, so that was kind of how I entered this domain. Became really interested in and continuing to think about, and have written a little bit on the idea of, you know, this is something that I've been talking to Michelle also on, the kind of digital Anthropocene, the extent to which a lot of our relationship with nature is increasingly mediated through digital technologies and digital science and data. So I work on that to some extent. Then I have also strong interest on the governance of emerging tech, and have published a little bit on what we call the kind of you know, both responsible research and innovation, which is the field of research within science and technology studies. Sorry, I'm a boring academic, so I will throw this really dull stuff at you. But yeah, outside of AI, I do interesting things, and I can talk about that. But within this field, I am an academic, so I've published and I've increasingly using that to look at geoengineering. So I've written a few things about you know, the governance of emerging tech, particularly, you know, we have all these fantastical ideas now that are coming about for negative emission technologies, and, you know, and so on and so forth. So I think about how do you govern emerging technologies, and how do you manage something whose consequences you don't understand. And there is a lot of thinking on that, if not so much in the field of AI, but definitely in the field of genetics, on genomes, on, you know, like a lot of people have done work on nanoscience. So there have been other moments in time where we have had technologies that we don't understand and whose impact we don't understand, but as a society we have sought to shape them, and how do you kind of create those kinds of frameworks. So that's something that I do, and also currently some of the work that I've done on AI, and I've published something on this, which is looking at the use of AI in urban spaces. So I've been interested in the smart city and what this smart city means in the context of India, and have been in kind of you know, settings where AI technologies are being deployed to run the city, and city is seen as this, you know, I mean, even the smart city mission creates these command and control centers, they're called, you know, and Pune has a command and control center where all the data from your red light to your phones is coming. And how do you kind of, and there's e-governance. So there's all these, like, you know, I call them socio-technological imaginaries and dreamscapes of smart cities that are fueling change. So both from kind of interrogating it at a slightly more academic level, I've also been involved directly in sort of, I crafted a data policy for the city of Panjim. Nobody uses it, and I am going to go and present it again at a workshop on Monday. But so I've done some work which is kind of pragmatic about the governance of the digital space, yeah, and I mean, increasingly, I mean, my kind of concern with the whole AI conversation in India, and even what I have written and thought about, is that there is really little empirical social science data. You know, like, we are all worried about it. We all have concerns, we have anecdotes, but as a boring academic, I want to see data, and I want to see data about how things are changing. So like the medical anthropologists are doing great work, but, you know, there are people who are doing work. You know, there's Janaki, who's done really good work with frontline workers and ASHA workers who are being given all sorts of digital tools. But I'm really interested now, my focus, say, on the AI, and I'll keep doing this boring governance stuff, but AI is really trying to understand how the, you know, how the interaction between the user and the technology is shaping their agency, their relationship with each other, their relationship with nature, and so on and so forth. And there are particular sites that I'm really interested in, including health, but also agriculture and other places. So, yeah, so my kind of take on most of these things, unfortunately, is somewhat formal. And I've done it as an academic. And I think that you're coining the word responsible is quite interesting, because I think responsibility is a really interesting way to think about it. And the Wadhwani Institute in AI had a huge argument there with them once, and they said you can't regulate AI. It'll be like you're regulating atmospheric chemistry or organic chemistry. I said, no, you can regulate research. You can regulate what you go and discover. We have done it with hereditary gene coupling. We have done it with geoengineering. We've done it with certain kinds of other technologies. So there are ways in which we can shape technologies. We can put technology in their place, and ethical frameworks, and so a lot to learn from other domains. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
That's me. And I also live in Goa, and I'm a real believer of face-to-face conversations. So if there's ever an opportunity, Hassan and others who are Goa-based, and you want to talk about it,
I'll make a Goa group later. I will do this. Goa meetup. Okay. So I think we are done with the first half now, and we are quite on time actually. So that's great. But since we have been talking about being responsible and being understanding, let's do that. We can take just a 5-minute break, get up from your chairs, move around. There is a link of the Miro board. If you have to use the washroom, do all of that. But there is a link of the Miro board in the chat. Aditi have shared this recently. You can just log in with your Google account and access it. We have 4 sections in that. But I think for now we have done so if you see any challenges that you want to put in the challenge section, please do that. I'll just share the screen and show you what I'm talking about. So it's just a little easier. So there are some people who are already kind of playing around here. So this is the individual challenges that we are putting up. If you see that, if you want to add some.
Hassan, we lost you.
Can you hear me? I'm back.
Yes.
Zoom just hang for a bit. Stop sharing. Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me? I think it's the Miro with sharing screen. Zoom is doing something. Anyway, so we don't have, I think, time to do the collateral and doing the clustering part today. But please put in the problem in the next half. We will take 5 minutes from now. And then come back, and then we will go towards the solution parts. So we have all done talking about the challenges that we feel. What do you think are some solutions to this, and what are the actions that we can actually take? Like, give us something actionable so that we can. So the eventual goal is to finally find some possible solutions that the community agrees on, and then find what are the actions that needs to be taken, and then figure out what are the resources required to take these actions, and figure out how do we get there. So let's just take 5 minutes so we get off the screen for a bit, move around a little bit, and then come back in 5. Sounds good? All right.
See you all in a bit.
Yeah, see you in a bit.
Sure.
Because we are doing pretty good on time, I think. Yeah.
I'll just be on mute because I'll be behind my screen for a few minutes.
Yeah. Also in the Miro board, we have two sections on the right side of the notes, which is one is the resources. So if you think of a book, article, something that we should be reading, please put it in the resources. And if you want to share your contact information with the group, with all of us, just leave it in the contact information box and yeah, we'll get in touch.
Hassan, is it possible to share the screen so that it records for our session for a bit, so that you know, for those tuning in later, they can see what goes on in
to the board, Miro board?
Yeah, to you know, the Miro board into the Zoom meeting.
I think my computer is hanging when I share the screen. Aditi,
I'll do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we are. That looks.
I like how the recording will have bird sounds in the back. Is that coming from your garden, Hassan?
Yeah.
Wow.
I live in a bird sanctuary, you know that.
Is this on, you're in Goa right now, right? Or?
Yeah. So this is an island called Churao. It's a small island. The whole island comes, there is a bird sanctuary, Salim Ali Bird Sanctuary. But the whole island comes under the sanctuary laws. So like birds.
That's so nice. So let's see where we are with this. So for me, this is also the first time that we're using this Miro in such a detail. So I'm so keen to see what kind of sort of comes out of it. It's I can already see how wonderful, what a tool this would be to use for teaching as well, to get students involved in
interactive teaching, interactive.
Yeah. And this is definitely an outcome of the pandemic, when suddenly we were all forced to use Zoom and Teams to do teaching, which none of us had ever done before. But it also kind of signaled that we really needed to rethink teaching, something I said earlier in the chat as well, is that, and it kind of sort of speaks to how tech has both positive and negative dimensions. For us lecturers, professors are used to speaking to, you know, large groups of students, getting them engaged. We had all kind of sort of realized in recent years that that model didn't really work all that well anymore, simply because students live their lives differently than we did when we were young. Yeah, I'm 47 now. So, you know, I was a student in my early 20s. There was already internet, but it wasn't on your phones. It wasn't so much present in your life. It was certainly not a thing that generated immense amounts of data. When I have my students now, this is a common complaint among my colleagues. So students are always on their laptop, or they're always managing multiple kind of social media accounts. And I always tell them, yeah, but this is literally how people live their lives now. So you can't suddenly expect people to travel back in time 20 years to attend your lecture and pretend that none of that is happening. That is a lot of my colleagues would really love that, for it to return to the way it was when they themselves were engaged. But that doesn't work. So I'm looking at this Miro and I'm thinking, yeah, this is probably a way where you can do it. But in the scope of roughly 2.5 years, we've had to completely reinvent ourselves. And now the funny thing is, a lot of our universities want us to go back. So previously I was with the University of Amsterdam, and they want to go back to physical teaching the way it was. And I've been trying to convince them that we will never go back to that. That phase is gone, and that is partly facilitated by the pandemic, obviously. So where are we going with this? I see Venkata is doing things, Ratan is doing things. Hassan, can you sort of provide a bit of a
direction?
You know, kind of sort of, can you be the reporter on this, as if this is a soccer match, you know, stay with what everybody's obsessing over right now?
So just to give you a bit of context on these 4 areas, the 4 sections that we have in the board, you can see on your screen. So individual challenges are like everyone's opinion, and then I think we are finding, the Venkata is doing a great job of finding the threads, the common thread between the messages and writing it down. In the solutions part, we want to, like, so for example, you see Ratan building from the ground up, or education from the early on, about away from technology. Now the thing, what solutions, it's great ideas and great solutions. Now the action part is what can be done. Okay, so like if you say education early on, so does it mean like a workshop for young children which can be done about technological behavior? How do you interact with technology, and what should be a responsible behavior? So what are the action points that we can do in a week, in a month time? You know, like something that we actually can raise support for, raise money for, and do. So that's the eventual goal. So I think if we can turn some actions on board, it will really help us kind of go forward from there.
If I may jump in for just a second. So I think that idea of educating young children about, you know, what are the optimal ways to engage with technology really resonates with me. And I think, you know, there is scope to do that with grown-ups as well, for lack of a better term. You know, a lot of these conversations around data privacy, particularly in technology, has centered around consent, right? What I mean, giving consent to cookies when we visit a web page and so on. But the fact is, you know, most of us, even with the privilege of our education and technology, I know there are times when I feel stumped by the detailed description of cookies on a cookie settings page. And I'm like, wait, you know, do I need to give my consent to that? Should I? It's not even so much do I need to, like, should I? You know, what are the trade-offs? What are the pros and cons? So I think, you know, ideating something like a workshop or an interactive, you know, like an interactive tool online. I think there have been a couple of ideas around that. I'll try to dig up the links and share it. But if we could explore this idea of unpacking consent, unpacking meaningful consent, and how, you know, how can we, what are the best practices around consent from a consumer's perspective, you know? So I think that is something I would love to explore with all of you as well.
That's a great idea. I think we should put that in the solutions part.
Can I just add to?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Always saying no to everything.
Kiran, there is some noise from your side, but
sorry. Yes. So you know, is this any better?
Yeah.
So my behavior has now changed to basically saying no to everything. I found browser plugins that click no for me, so I don't even have no anymore. And I've deployed ad blockers to do this clicking no business everywhere, and it's not made my life any worse. You know, it turns out that saying no means you still get everything. It's just that they don't get it.
Yeah.
Can you please share that in the chat?
Some kind of a research project. You know, somebody built a cookie consent clicker as a research project. It's called Consent-O-Matic. And I found that I can also use it on my phone if I change my browser. You know, so I don't use Chrome on my phone anymore. I use Kiwi browser simply because I can use browser plugins in it. And I can use things like this that just go ahead and click all these links for me. Let me see if I can find the link to it. And I'll put it on the chat.
I'm always this crazy person who always goes to every website and clicks no, 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 no. Everybody's making fun of me, but yeah, I try to be pretty
You're not alone.
consistent.
I do that as well.
Small question to Hassan and anybody who's moderating it. So how do we spend the next 1 hour? Are we just documenting our individual solutions and actions, or are we doing it together? Can you guide?
So I think it's a roundtable type discussion. So there is no like specific thing. So while you have some solutions in your mind and you have worked on a few things, please put it in the solutions part. And like you can talk about what do you think, what the solution means once you put it there. And then we can figure out, okay, what can be an action that we can take out from this solution? Like what do we do in the coming month or weeks that actually helps to us get towards that solution? So that's the next 30 minutes.
So if I understand, sorry, but so we are capturing the solutions we already know of first and then brainstorming on actions. Am I understanding this right?
Up to you. Yeah. If you want, we can discuss. If you have the action in mind, please put it up there. We are just collecting the data, the thoughts of everyone here, so we can form like a unified strategy. I'll tell you what we are planning to do with that next in a bit.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, like whatever challenges we have discussed, some of them are captured here. You can think personal or professional challenges which are not on the board and add it. So maybe we can spend the first 5 minutes just to make sure that all of our challenges that we have in our mind are on the board. If they're not added, please add them. And once we have done that, maybe we can move to the solutions part. Does it sound good, Hassan? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to add what Sujana said, that so one of my like colleagues worked on a particular project called Sway. So in that he was educating at an early on stage where you were building from the ground up, and the project was called Sway, and the project was focused on getting or like in a board games or like a game sort of manner, educating them regarding about media literacy and the different levels of it, and how you can identify different norms such as male gaze, and how these type of things shape the minds of kids. And for that also he went to different NGOs, and like how Suchna said regarding workshops. So that was a part of the stage where he was working at different NGOs, conducting workshops with the kids which are there in the NGOs, and also helping them like play the board game, because when you bring it a new game, you are sort of an unaware kind of stage where you're like, okay, how do we play this? And once they got into the gist of it, there were certain results which were in a positive side, which showed constant growth in them, where they were a little bit more aware of how they were receiving content, like say on different media such as TV, television, social media, Instagram, and all these different regions. And just to like what Kiran said, even like there's one more thing which I just recently found on my phone, which is called bedtime mode, in which the phone just turns off everything. And it has been like a bliss, because you don't get notifications, you don't get any sounds, even if it's a call or anything, and you just be in a stage where you're like, okay, yeah, it's in a stage where you can just ignore everything.
Fabulous. And I also discovered Android 13 allows you to not show notifications icon in your status bar. And so you only see the notifications and you pull it down, and it's so great. It's like that icon there that's always there telling you, look at me, it's gone. It's such a life-changing thing.
That's a great point, by the way. Like looking at features from the perspective of not like how we can make features which let us to use the phones more or technology more, but like how do we have features which can actually make it use less? Like that's a great point as well.
Yeah. Like this discussion we had in our group, where we were talking, like, so we had a gamer group in which we were talking about that some of the people in that group were getting more addicted to playing games in those areas, and how we could so just one of us, like, I think this has been done recently where you can just put a timer, but it's that thing of you have to consciously do it. But if it's something which it's set in stone, in the sense where I get a particular, say either it's a PlayStation or either if it's a PC, or like if I'm doing something and there's a set in stone time that this is the time of amount, I can just do it. So for example, I think the one example which I come on top of my mind comes to is Be Real, in which you can just scroll for just 15 minutes and you have just 2 minutes of time to just upload a picture or something. But that is like something which has a break in bones to it, but I think that can be something developed more upon.
Yeah. You have put this in the board as well, right?
Sorry.
Did you put this idea in the board, Miro board?
I'm putting the second one. I'm putting, yeah. The other one, yes, the other one I did, yeah.
Okay. Somebody have put this note called identify touch points, posting, accepting cookies, and provide a simple visual explanation for each. It's a great idea. Can someone, whoever put this in, they expand on this idea a little bit more? What do you mean by touch points exactly?
Okay, that was me. Going to Suchna's point, right? See, the basic problem that I see is ever-growing complexity. It is hard even for, tech-savvy people like us, like Suchna was talking about the consent, right? This is a complicated concept, and she's an expert in this, right? My point is that my mother has no idea about what all this is about. Right. And so the one at least stream of activity that I see over a longer period of time is to just demystify this and explain in simple English what is going on, so that people actually have an understanding of what is it that they are dealing with. And what are the choices that they have at various points in time, at the time of viewing an ad, posting, accepting LinkedIn and messages. I mean, all these are like complicated technology concepts.
Right.
And so
makes sense.
Something to explain to my mom what is going on.
Makes sense. It's a great idea. So I put your point as well, and I expand a little bit. It's simple explanation in regional languages as well, so where we can actually reach people who doesn't speak English as such.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think it was also one of the projects that I tried to do, which was like, you don't even have to have that much text on the page, right? Like if you pick up Kindle's license agreement, it's like 76 pages or something, who will read that? So make it graphical. Like we make technology so graphical and intuitive, but understanding it, we do not do a good job there. So just use icons, and this much of your data is going out, just show arrows of data going out, make it language agnostic and easy for people to understand.
So building off of what all of you have been saying about, unpacking these concepts in an interactive, exploratory way, I've just shared a couple of links that attempt to do that. They're a little bit dated, maybe like 3 or 4 years old, but I think they get the basic ideas really, really well. And, the end goal, as Maitri said, is to be able to explain it to your grandparents or to your small kids, right? So shared a couple of examples that could provide jumping off points. And of course, we need to make it sort of more suited to our locale and our regional needs. But these are good jumping off points. I don't have edit access to the Miro page. So if the moderators could add it, or someone else who has edit access.
The resources I have added the 2 websites that you shared.
Okay, thanks.
Also, just one thing, I think that aspect of how graphical thing, like representation of more graphical elements also engages us more. That is also something which is there in the teachings of when we are into the field. So in my case, when I was into field of design, that is something which we tend to focus on in that element of how to get more seconds or more time of the person who's coming to that particular site or particular page or particular poster that you've created, and how to get that more engaging time from them. And I think if we opposite that, or do it opposite polar to it, in the sense of I think Arati said, of reducing the amount of data which is being shown. I think some apps actually do that, where you just shown actually what is required by you, and don't go into more say a rabbit hole of just constantly seeing different things and getting more dopamine rush of, okay, I just want to get this in more information which I can get out of it.
Yeah.
I think just to add to that, there should also be, I know maybe we can or not with there are some plugins where you can actually turn off personalization, but the idea of breaking the filter bubble, right? You should be able to figure out that I don't want to see things which are aligning with my current point of thinking. I want to see other things as well. And I think there was a website for news articles. I can bring the link for that. But what that was trying to show was contradictory viewpoints, right? So this is what they are saying, this is what they are saying. Now you make your own judgment of what's true and what's not. But having that view in your feed is very important. So maybe asking for a setting from, say, Facebook to turn off my personalization feed because I don't want to see personalized content. That should be available everywhere on different platforms.
Yeah, that's a great idea. They should put that up.
I'm just wondering if any of you are aware of a tool which allows you to compare what different personas would see online. So, this has been an ongoing concern with me. For instance, I feel that my Instagram feed over time, for example, has become so much fixated on stuff that are pertinent to moms, so that it completely ignores my professional identity at this point. And it's super annoying for me, And so I'm just wondering if anyone is aware of a tool which, kind of allows you to say, what would, say, someone in my age group, but from a different gender, see if they were to, if they were to browse these pages, what would be the next recommendation? Or, what would someone from my, I don't know, from my region, but of a different age group or a different demographic in some way see, maybe I'm putting this very badly, and I'm happy to kind of explore this idea.
No, it's perfect. Actually, you are really on a good point. And I haven't seen a lot of these frameworks in place which can kind of analyze the impact. So I have seen a few works where researchers have manually done this work.
Yes, exactly.
I've had an accidental discovery of this thing because I've disabled personalization on my phone, so it's not linked to my account anymore, but only to my device and my browsing habits. And I changed my phone last year, and until that point, I'd been getting a lot of clothes ads on Instagram. And when I changed my phone, I started getting workout ads, and these buff men telling me that I can also be as buff as them, and this just wouldn't go away. And it's like, it's like Instagram turned into soft porn for me just because I changed my phone. It was painful because there was no way for me to explain that I don't want to see this. I want, the clothes or the nice pottery, but please, I don't want to work out. I don't be embarrassed about my muscles. And that's eventually gone away. But honestly, that was very, very disorienting to see that, it's the same feed, different ads just because I changed my phone.
Yeah, I've actually I've done a couple of publications about this, about the conflation between online and offline lives in kind of sort of the lives of my informants. For those of you who don't know about this, I wrote a book about fitness and bodybuilding in India, kind of sort of working and collaborating with trainers for this project over a period of about a decade. And of course, social media is crucial to their enterprise, but it has negative and positive aspects to it. The most negative that I can think of is that it is kind of a mirror that is always there in your lives, but it isn't. It's a bit like the quote I shared of Hassan earlier, where we were talking, this was a few days ago, and Hassan was saying to me, like, in the past we would read a newspaper and it was just a newspaper, but now the newspaper is also reading us. It's gathering data about how long we stare at a particular article or what we click on, or, all of that is known. In a sense, it's the same with the social media kind of functioning as a mirror. It's not just a mirror anymore in the gym that you look into once. It's also a mirror that reads you and kind of makes expectations about you. And especially for my informants, they're constantly, of course, searching for the perfect body one way or the other, and they have these ideas about it themselves, but it does shape their minds in terms of thinking that their bodies are never finished. And of course, for men, this is a relatively new development. For women, this has been going on much longer, and started, of course, with the objectification of bodies on billboards and in movies. It's only recently, relatively recent, that this has started happening in Bollywood and in other regional cinemas. And Bollywood started a bit with Om Shanti Om, with Shah Rukh Khan taking off his shirt in one of the songs and flashing his newly baked abs, and then kind of sort of progressed from there. But yeah, obviously media, the entanglement of social media and what it produces is quite crucial. And the big difference, I think, coming back again to the simple line that Hassan shared with me about the newspaper reading you, we're constantly being read. So everything we do online produces data. One of the people I met in Bangalore a few months ago said to me, like, we exude data with everything we do. We don't just breathe out, but with every step we take, in a sense, we generate data one way or the other. And this is something I'm particularly concerned about, is that we barely realize how much data we share of each other just by having this little phone do things, the games we play, the way the time we just simply stare at an Instagram page or a Facebook page or whatever. Maybe even the tools. I have no idea what Miro reads of us. It's a free to use tool, which already is telling me that Miro will be actually there must be a model behind Miro, otherwise you can't do this, right, for free. Does anybody know anything about that? Who
They
owns
have a paid account, and you can only make 3 boards for free, and then after that you pay.
Follow the money. Yeah, absolutely. Follow the money.
I think
this was one of the points that I made, right? I know the people working on all of this kind of stuff, right, across all of the big tech companies. They're normal people like you and me, families and this and that. They're not evil people. If they're asked to optimize the click-through rate, the algorithm will automatically lead them to whatever appeals to our deepest desires and fears and so on. The question to me is not what the technology is like clay, right? You decide what you do, what you want to do with it, and ultimately, if the company's valuation is linked to daily active users and all of those kinds of things, once we have set up the rules of the game, these outcomes are very predictable. If it is today, it is Instagram, tomorrow it will be TikTok, and day after tomorrow it will be metaverse and beyond that. I think unless the people will behave according to the incentives.
Thank you, Venkata. I think we have you're on about time. So this have been really amazing and mind-blowing for me and for all of us. This is really helpful for us to actually understand it from different perspective. Again, we heard from perspective of people who are building the technology versus people who are using the technology, the parents versus the artists, and all of these perspectives. Really helps us to think of it from a larger perspective. Also, we have some really actionable points now that we will kind of follow up on in the future. Aditi, if you can just stop sharing for a minute, I'll just share the screen with the website and just tell you guys what are the plans for the future, and then I will hand off to Michael, and then we'll go from there. So just to give you a rough idea, so you have seen the website already. We have sent it. The challenges that we are for. I can't share my screen. I guess the Zoom doesn't allow me to share my screen. Anyway. Sorry, Zoom just crashes every time I share my screen for some reason. Anyway, so the next step would be, so the first step that we had in the website is called Collaborative Workshop, a 3-hour session with a diverse group of people to identify the biggest challenges in our personal and professional domain caused due to technology. And I am really happy to see that we have done this today and we were able to get really good inputs. The second stop, if you can scroll down, Aditi. The second step was to actually have a collaborative campaign. So basically collecting all of these ideas was essentially an effort to build almost like a kit so of information, so almost like a protest kit that people distribute during a movement, so which have all the information, which is research with data backed information, and the kind of talking point that people can do, and then find out creators and influencers and different people in media to actually spread this message from different mediums, and especially talking to people who are working in regional languages in small tier 2, tier 3 cities in India, and getting that message to them. They don't have the time or the resources to do the research and to find out all of this information and to actually have some actionable points. So I think that's the effort that we are doing here. And the eventual goal is to actually have a platform where like all of these different, so as I think someone pointed out correctly, that people are really disconnected from each other in different domains and have no idea what all of us are doing in each of our domain. And I think that collaboration is the solution to that larger problem. One thing I would really encourage you to do is to go to that Miro board. On the right, there is a contact information box. If you put a sticky note with your contact information, it will be helpful for other people can contact you in case they want to. So that's it from my side. Thank you all for coming. Michael, off to you. You are muted.
Yeah, now I'm muted. Yeah, thank you all. I mean, this this has been very powerful to me, very interesting. I didn't quite know what to expect. I mean, I'm used to academic formats where a couple of people do some dramatic paper with a PowerPoint presentation, and then we're all kind of lost in a trail of thoughts of our own, and then people start saying something or start a discussion. I'm sure Tanya can relate. You know, sort of the more academic. I thought this was kind of free flowing, and just by introducing ourselves and kind of seeing what we bring to the table, we could kind of get a sense of, you know, the different issues that are at stake. And for me, this is a multiple year involvement where I look at the social and cultural dimensions as an anthropologist of artificial intelligence and related technologies, because more and more I also realize the moment I talk about AI, I talk about social media, I talk about databases, I talk about machine learning, but also virtual reality and all sorts of other tools that kind of depend on it. And something we haven't really even brought to the table here, also the way it draws upon planetary resources, because it's an immensely costly technology for the environment. If you think of the kind of large scale experiments being conducted in Bangalore by IT companies and the kind of resources they depend on, and if you kind of offset that to Bangalore being a city being in a significant crisis in terms of access to water, to cooling, its population density, etc. You know, they have a whole kind of sort of another dimension to this problem. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Atlas of AI. It's a truly wonderful book, or wonderful I wouldn't necessarily call it. It's a very urgent book, and it kind of speaks to this too. So as it usually goes after a meeting like this, I need to go for a walk and kind of process it and probably go back to the stickies on Miro and probably watch this whole thing again, and then meet with some of you kind of individually again and to flesh out. I'm hoping to be in Bangalore again for a few months next year. So yeah, let's all keep in touch. Let's, speaking of social media, let's add each other where we can and where we want to be. Perhaps over to you, Aditi.
Thanks, Michael. I mean, what we are trying to do here is like issues which have been created over 10 years or 15 years. We're just trying to go through all of them. So definitely got intense, and I'm sure there's a lot more that all of us have to say, because it's a diverse crowd, and the experiences that we have had individually themselves are a lot. So it's good to bring all of that. And definitely love the beginning, but I'm sure that a lot of these sessions need to be followed up, and we need to fine tune on what are we trying to solve for whom, right? Because the problems are very different for all the people that we're trying to solve, and it's a very mixed board right now, which gives a good view. And from here, it'll be like more narrowing down and turning them into actionable insights. So thank you so much for the inputs, and I learned a lot today. So thanks for that. Hassan?
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. It's been great. I was not expecting this. It's been better than what I was expecting. So thank you for that. Before you go, please, if you have anything else to say, any ending note, any thoughts, if you would like to contribute something to this initiative, something that you think you can help us with, please go ahead We have about 5 minutes, and that's it. Feedback, guys, feedback.
Maybe for me, I really appreciated this time. It was really exciting to be here with you and to meet all of you and learn about your work. I would really love to keep in touch. I saw the Instagram website, Responsible Today initiative. I think it would be nice to have something related to technology in that name. Just like because Responsible Today as such, like as somebody who wasn't here in the workshop has no idea what that is about.
Sure.
And I was also wondering if that is a like if you really want to make this in any way, like what kind of a form do you want to take? Like, do you want to come up with an association, or is it just an initiative for like in a very broad sense, or also is it will that be something that focuses on India or a global initiative? I think it's very difficult these days to make something very national, right? Because all this AI is global, and these technologies make us live in a very globalized world. So I kept thinking about like there are many problems, there are many possible solutions, more than we can even bring to the Miro desk, right? So I think it would be nice to, as the next step, to think about some sort of form that this initiative should take, and then think about the main question, the main focus, and the target audience, of course. And I would be very happy to keep in touch and to be a part of this. I find it absolutely exciting, and also absolutely urgent.
So to respond to that, Tanya, great question. Then I'll pass it on to Michael if they want to add something. But basically, the idea of this was almost, for me, it was almost like a wake-up call, because we don't really have that in and especially if you're talking about the scope of it, like we would really like to focus on India, because I don't think like there is any sense of going forward. There are many organizations which are actually working on the global scale, but I don't see many organizations working in India in this specific space. Now, what is that space? We are talking about a particular, almost like a public owned or a collaborative medium. It's like a so no money, no business, basically a non-profit organization almost, but working especially about awareness of these things and actually bringing this conversation to the people who don't speak these languages, who don't speak English, who don't understand what AI is and what code is, to bringing these conversation to the larger part of the media through content and through different tools, right? So one of the main focus that we are having is content in regional languages. So through television, through Instagram, through people who are making reels, like how do we collaborate with them to actually spread these kind of messages to a larger base? And we have some organization in India which are working in this space. They're very focused on the legality part of it, like the policy making part of it, and the laws that are actually in this space. I think there is a requirement for going beyond that now, to actually make people understand what is happening more than building the law, because once they understand, they can stand up. In India have shown again and again that we can protest, we can stand up on the roads, and we can get our demands met. Like, that's not a problem, but like they don't understand what the problem is. Like, so first, that's the first step. A problem well stated is half solved. So that's the first step that we are working on, especially focusing on India, especially on the smaller areas where regional languages are required, tier 2, tier 3 cities. Michael, anything?
Makes a lot of sense. Thanks for the explanation.
Yeah, no, I think I need to think about. I think it's a very good question, Tanya. I mean, for me, this is just a start. So I think Hassan and Diti and I will just, probably have to let this sink in a bit and then think about the next steps. And I'm very keen, from input from all of you. I don't think I have much to add at this stage. I always saw this first as a platform to bring like-minded people together and to see what organically emerges as a next step. And I think certainly a lot of ideas have already been shared about this. So yet to be continued.
Yeah, of course, it will evolve. So I guess did anybody else want to say anything, we are on time. So
you want to share some final words, Aditi?
No, enjoy the rest of your weekend. It was really great, and we'll stay in touch, and we definitely will come back with the next steps here once we have a discussion. So thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah.
See you all. Have a lovely weekend.
Have a lovely weekend.
This was good.
Happy weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't use your phones in the weekend.